I sent the PDF, did you see the email? That's the hard copy.
That's the hard copy.
And they sent it to the district.
Got it.
Goes past, they sent it.
Yeah, no.
That's always wise to be prepared.
Is it just,
I got all the things here.
Frankly, not much of it's real yet, so there's like, a lot that still has to happen. But it's pretty cool. And I'll say, I was not sure up until election day, so just like,
Yeah, it's cool to know. Yeah. Even with polls in it, they have more.
no, right.
Much less in the area we don't get that luxury.
Mike,
We're kinda glad we didn't do polls.
for the land
That's the last thing you needed, right?
under 3. Okay. And announce something, Curtis, and then we'll go into that. Okay. All right, Wayne, we're ready. All right, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Roseville Area School Board meeting for Tuesday, November 12th. Clerk will please take the roll.
Yes, thank you. Evening, everyone. Oh, my goodness. Director Boguszewski,
here.
Treasurer Clark,
Here.
Chair Anderson,
Here.
Director Goggins,
Here?
Director Johnson,
Here.
and Clerk Chu is here.
Thank you. Okay, item number 2, any agenda adjustments for the evening?
There are no agenda adjustments.
All right, thank you. We're moving on to announcements, comments, and recognitions. We do have Director Johnson has an announcement, or no, what is it again? I'm sorry, he was kidding,
Director
sorry.
Goggins.
Yeah, Director Goggins.
I just wanted to make sure that our community was aware that this Saturday, we're having the Raider Book Fair, and it's going to be an exciting event. There's going to be books available, lots of different kinds of books. There's also going to be some displays of student work and some performances by student, and it's the community, the whole community is welcome to attend. It's at Harmar, which is pretty centrally located for folks, and it goes from 10 o'clock until
3. And
3.
it's at the Burns and Nobles in
I'm
Harmar.
sorry, Barnes and Noble specifically. So that just sounds like a lot of fun. I want people to be aware of it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Goggins. And I have a brief announcement. Next Wednesday, the 20th, all are welcome to the community meeting that we are having at the Roseville Area High School. Everyone's role in school safety. The featured speaker is Dr. James Densley. It's going to be from 6 to 7:30 p.m. All are welcome as we talk about this important role, again, in school safety and trying to prevent gun violence. So I hope we can see you next Wednesday.
And thank you. That'll be in the John G. Tyne Auditorium at Roz.
Great.
Thank you, Chair.
Right, that's what I was gonna ask, in the new John G. Tyne Auditorium. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then this evening, Mike, Director Boguszewski, the land acknowledgement, please.
Thank you. Roseville Area Schools acknowledges that we reside on traditional, ancestral, contemporary, and unceded territory of the Dakota people. From Bedote, a confluence of the Mississippi and Minnesota rivers, a place the Dakota people poetically claim as the center of earth, directly beneath the center of heaven, to Indian Mounds Park, a sacred place of burial built by ancestors of living people and home to the only known remaining burial grounds or mounds within the Minneapolis-St. Paul urban core. Indigenous people have cared for this land. Through warfare, genocide, relocation, and removal perpetrated by colonizers, the state of Minnesota, and the federal government, injustices that reduced over 150 million Indigenous people to around 300,000, Indigenous people have given their blood, tears, heart, resilience, and love to this land. Enduring boarding schools that were in operation from 1879 through the 1930s, where assimilation through humiliation was the curriculum, and unspeakable atrocities occurred daily, to the foster care system, where more kids were removed from Indigenous homes than any other group in Minnesota, Indigenous people have not lost their culture of identity and still reside on this land. Roseville Area Schools is committed to ensuring the culture of our indigenous relatives, the original and rightful caretakers of this land, is studied, preserved, and celebrated. We are committed to understanding and honoring the sovereignty that has been denied to nearly 600 indigenous nations, including 11 federally recognized tribes in Minnesota through the breaking of over 400 treaties, and we are committed to the truth of the history of our indigenous relatives, the success of our indigenous students, and to the healing we hope to create through this commitment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Boguszewski. Moving on to item 4, summary of community input received for this evening's action items. I have not received anything for this evening. Mark. Okay, that moves us to this evening's consent agenda. We do have a retirement this evening, but I will entertain a motion to approve this evening's consent agenda minus retirement.
I move that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded, this evening's consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, same sign. All right.
So we have one retirement tonight. Name is Jody Goodwill, and she's been a receptionist at the district center for the past 11 years. So we thank you for her service, and I move that for her retirement.
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Moved and seconded, the retirement of Jody Goodwill. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you, Clerk Shu. Okay, we are now moving on to gifts this evening. It will be read by Director Clark.
Thank you. Happy to do this evening. We have several gifts this evening. First gift would be to Abedu Techa, Jackson Life Insurance Company, on behalf of Burrow Kingenbach, a monetary gift for Meals on Wheels. The next gift was for Falcon Heights Elementary by DonorsChoose.org, books and classroom supplies for the kindergarten classrooms. Next is also for Falcon Heights Elementary, Charities Aid Foundation of America, a monetary gift for student needs. The next couple will be for Parkview Center School, Amazon, backpacks and school supplies for students in need. Gloria Given, monetary gift for the Media Center. Nick Vane, Harmony Home Care Incorporated, a monetary gift for the AVID program. David and Kathleen Bailey, the next one's for Roseville Area High School, and all the rest are, until I change one for the high school, Roseville Area High School. David and Kathleen Bailey, a monetary gift for the Boys Cross Country program. Roseville Boys Backcourt Club, a monetary gift for the Boys Basketball program. Joan Ringsdorf, a monetary gift for Family and Consumer Sciences Department. Roseville Anderson Nelson VFW, a monetary gift for the cheerleading program. Susan Campion Bloomquist, a monetary gift for the girls volleyball program. Susan E. Schultz, a monetary gift for the girls volleyball program. Your Cause Blackbot, a monetary gift for the volleyball program. Timothy B. and Mary L. Plunkett, a monetary gift for the debate program. The next one's for Roseville Area Middle School. Cynthia Price, sewing machine table, and sewing supplies for Family and Consumer Sciences Department. And the last is for the Roseville Area Schools. Your Cause Blackbot, on behalf of Karen Doherty, a monetary gift at the district's discretion. I'd like to thank again for our generous community for their continued support of our schools and programs. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Director Clark. All right, we're moving on this evening to reports and non-action items. First up is our enrollment and demographic report. Come on up, team. We have a wonderful team here tonight, taking certain parts. Welcome, guys. Come on up.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for having us this evening. We are here to present, as Todd shared with us, that we are talking through our 2024 enrollment and demographic report. And I'm Jake Bondolini. I am the Executive Director of Teaching and Learning with Roseville Schools. And I'm going to have my team here, starting with Delon, and then we'll jump over to Luli, introduce themselves.
All right, Delon Smith, Associate Superintendent of Equity and Innovation. Good to be with you tonight.
Good evening, glad to be here. Lourdes Flores Hanson, Multilingual Program Administrator.
Hello, everyone. I'm Melissa Sonic. I have the privilege of serving as one of our other associate superintendents.
Good evening, Niceta Thomas, Executive Director of Student Services.
Thanks. We will get started and look at our district goals and key strategies. These were the three that really stand out when we take a look at our enrollment and demographic report. The district goal number 2, our learners contribute to an equitable, caring society. And under those, the bullet points, I think are relevant to this report, as well as our goal number 3, which is that we are a culturally responsive, inclusive, anti-racist district. You can see the bullets along with that one as well that relate to our report. And then the last one, the community is united behind meeting our student needs and building that culture of belonging. So with our enrollment and demographic report, it's divided into 2 sections. The first one is the enrollment, and that is based on October 1st student enrollment trends. And it will have information about those enrollment trends, and those are years over years, always taken from that same October 1st timeframe. And then we do have a class size information around elementary. The second part of the report is more of the demographics. We have 4 sections there looking at our race and ethnicity, multilingual learners, special education, and our educational benefits. So,
Quick question. I think I know this, but just to clarify, the reason we do October 1st is because that's really what the state mandates, correct? Because there are certain fundings and things like that that are tied specifically to October 1.
typically, yes. And when you look at like the Minnesota Department of Education, their reports page, most of those counts are based on October 1st counts. And this has been a tradition that we've had for many years, so it helps us to look back and say, here are the counts that we looked at on October 1st, and we look over that for many, many, many years. So,
Thank you.
yeah. And I'm gonna kick it off with Melissa Sonic that is going to talk through our enrollment.
All right, thanks, Jake. So over the next few slides, I'll be sharing information regarding our enrollment. This data comes from our enrollment office, and I mention that because it can be different than the data that MDE reports, as our data internally is updated more frequently. So what you see here on this slide is our enrollment trend over time. This data is taken, like Jake mentioned, from the same data source each year. You'll notice a jump in 2013 that we always tend to point out. That was when there was the addition of Harambe. And if we look at enrollment trends across the last decade, there's a decrease overall in enrollment of about 347 students. If we look at 2024 compared to just the year before, 2023, we see a slight decrease of 73 students. And I'll go on to expand on that a little bit more. So this slide here shows our enrollment by grade level. So it's looking at our cohorts. New this year, we've added pre-K to our enrollment report, so we'll say more about that in just a bit. But looking at our elementary grade level cohorts, they range between about 460 and slightly over 550. You may also notice in 2024, we have a smaller kindergarten cohort, less than 500 students, compared to a larger graduating class of about 600 plus students. We continue to see higher enrollment in more secondary grades than elementary, which is typical. One of our largest entry points for open enrollment is 9th grade, which is likely due to private or homeschool or open enrollment students transitioning to high school. New to this year's report, we're including pre-K information. So this chart that you see here shows pre-K enrollment over time. If we compare 2020 to 2024, we see an increase of about 40 students. And if we compare 2023 to 2024, we see a slight decline of about 20 students. But since that data was pulled, our actual enrollment, pre-K enrollment as of October 23rd is 282, which means we've filled 14 open slots, and there are still a few more open slots that we hope to fill. Openings occur due to things like cancellations, families moving, and we typically see this many openings in the fall for the reasons stated above, and then we fill it with students who are on our wait list. All right, this chart here shows our K-6 enrollment data over time. If we look at elementary enrollment trends across a decade, so we're comparing 2014 to 2024, while our enrollment from last year to this year is very similar, There's also been a decrease in enrollment of about 385 students in the last 10 years. This is something to really pay attention to and analyze. You know, it could be things like declining birth rates, as we know is the case, but it also could be due to families choosing other school options. So it's something to pay attention to. On this slide here, you see our secondary enrollment. This enrollment has differed by less than a dozen students or so for the last 3 years and really hovered around 3,440. That said, comparing 2023 to 2024, there was a slightly larger decline of about 40 students that we noticed. If you look across that like 10-year span, we also see an increase of about 60 students. So while elementary has trended down, secondary has trended up. Next, we'll transition to look at elementary schools enrollment. So 5 of our 8 elementary schools have seen a decrease in enrollment since 2020, which correlates with the COVID-19 pandemic and all that came with it. If we compare 2023 to 24, so just comparing a year, schools that trended down from the previous year include Bramhall, Edgerton, and Falcon Heights. Schools that were more or less like held steady include Central Park, Little Canada, and Parkview. And schools that slightly increased their enrollment include Harambe and Emmett D. Williams. We'll transition to secondary. For the most part, enrollment trends are steady with just a slight decline at Ross. All right, so this slide is it's a lot to unpack, so stay with me on this one. This is a look at our elementary average class sizes. All right, so if we start by looking at the far right column, it shows 2 numbers, all right? The first number is the average class size for 24-25. The second number is the average class size for 23-24. So it's comparing our elementary class sizes from this year to last year. The numbers across the bottom are the district average for that grade level. And then you'll notice there's some highlighted boxes up there, and those indicate split classes, all right? As you can see in the bottom right-hand corner of the table, the overall district class size averages are slightly larger this year when compared to last year. Currently, just so folks are aware of our district class size averages, the ones that you see in the bottom row are all within our class size average. So our average class size targets are for kindergarten are 22, for 1st through 3rd grade are 26, and for 4th through 6th grade are 31. So you can see all of the ranges there are within that average. Now, it can be, there can be a section that's higher or a section that's lower, so we're really talking about averages. It's also important to note that our lower class sizes, in part, are based on the levy that was approved by our community a few years back, and we continue to be incredibly grateful for the support of our community that made those lower class sizes possible. Also, we did not include secondary class size averages this year, and it was something we really talked about as a team. The reason we didn't include them is because of the large variations in the types of secondary classrooms. For example, if you compare the class size of a band class to like the class size of a sheltered content class for MLL newcomers, it really, like you'll see they're on opposite ends. So the range of the class size makes it really difficult to just average the data. That's why we're focusing on elementary. Also absent in this year's report is the Metro EXO class sizes. We moved away from that report because the data set is less reliable depending on how districts are reporting. That said, we continually closely monitor enrollment and class size, both at the elementary and secondary level. So at this point, I'll turn it back over to Executive Director Vonda Lindy to talk more about our demographic portion of the report. Yes, Mike.
A question though. So as you look at the numbers across the buildings, are there any that give you concern? Like, for example, 4, 5, 6 at Falcon Heights, like on the higher end of what we really want to have, if not above it.
Yeah, I would say here's what's tricky. Like, in a perfect world, all of our cohorts would be completely balanced, right? We have the same number of kids in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, and we don't live in a perfect world, so that doesn't happen. So we meet quite often, I would say in the spring and then summer, like leading up to the school year, to really look at Do we need to allocate additional staffing? Do we need to add a section? Do we need to add a 0.5? Do we need to add paraprofessional support? And those conversations, especially all the way through like October 1. And there are some additional supports that we'll put in place, so teachers can do some additional stipending if their class sizes get over a certain number. Oftentimes there's paraprofessional support, so we're paying very close attention. And I would say Falcon Heights isn't the only one. It's kind of like pockets of grade levels around the different district. Brimhall is another one. EDW is another one. So our enrollment office is great. They send out monthly reports of our class sizes, so that doesn't just happen once and done. That's an ongoing process where we pay close attention to that.
Well, and you raised a good point, which now is not the presentation to get into it, but you're right, that you can assign and allocate paraprofessionals and others to alleviate some of the pressure that might be felt by a solo teacher trying to handle a larger class. And so there's some flexibility to actually help with that you take advantage of your ability to do that.
And I'll also note that it's an average, and so I'm a former classroom teacher, right? There were years I was over the average, and there were years that I was under. Now, as a teacher, I will fully acknowledge, I never came to the district when I was under and was like, hey, can you send me 5-10 more kids, right? But we, on the flip side of that, when it does get big, we do want to pay attention to that, because we do want to have a strong culture for learning in all of our classrooms. We want to have, class sizes that are reasonable so they can develop relationships with other kids and support them academically, socially, and emotionally. So, yeah, that's something we pay close attention to.
And the only reason I labor on it is because, for a lot of people, that single number, average class size, has a lot of meaning. And they read perhaps a lot more into it than is warranted, but it is important. So I think the clear message, and I think I'm comfortable, is that you guys are on top of that and you're actively managing it. And it's not like you're just ignoring it and letting it go. You're doing what you can to try to manage to the caps that we hope to stay under. And you're looking at the situation and doing what you need to do to achieve that kind of environment that all the kids really deserve. So,
Yep,
thank you.
All right, so we're going to move into our demographic report and some of the areas in there. I'd like to, before we get started, just acknowledge one thing. You may have seen us shuffling some papers and doing some things over here. We may have lost one or two of our slides, and so they will be in your packet. They may not be on the report. It's one of those things, like the great things about collaborative documents is that you share them together. The bad thing about collaborative documents is you lose them sometimes when a change is made. So we're not sure where the slide went, but we can look after and then add that into the document later if needed. So,
And just to clarify,
acknowledge
Jake, so
that,
if some community member goes online, the board
Yeah.
packet is accurate online.
Board packet
Okay.
should be accurate, and I'm not sure if this report that shows here will be accurate. So
Thank you.
We'll find out in a few slides. There is multiple different sources that we pull our data from. Just want to acknowledge that, and that also will mean that some of our numbers that you look at will be different. So in the MARS reports that we provide, the compensatory education, the home language, enrollment, and economic indicators, they all get put together and more formally, crunched down into the same numbers. Currently, when we're looking at this preliminary MARS data, it is not completely accurate in terms of what is going to be the final numbers. So you might see the district numbers are saying this in Delon's report, and you might say, it's looking at this in Luli's report. So the total number might be a little bit different. That gets rectified later on in January. And so just want to acknowledge that to the board and questions that might come up for that. There's also, we have our own internal documentation, which is through Viewpoint and Synergy. And those are typically our most accurate and up-to-date information. The MARS report comes from the Minnesota Department of Education. And so that's all of the information that we pull from, as well as the MDE Education Center, the data center that is on their website. So I'm going to pass it off to Delon for the first part of our demographic report.
Thanks, Jake. Let's take a look at our demographics by race and ethnicity across the district. So as you can see from this graphic, our percentage of students of color currently sits at 62%, with our population of white students at 38%. This has held steady over the last couple of years, but about 10 years ago, this composition of students was about 50-50. So since then, our student of color population has increased at a rate of about 1.2 percentage points per year over those last 10 years. This graph shows a trend in our enrollment over time by race and ethnicity. You can see the district's enrollment gap is decreasing between our white students and our students of color. Just visually, you can see that. Our enrollment for white students over the past 6 years, which is shown in this chart, the last 6 academic years, has decreased at a rate of about 92 students a year, while our enrollment of students of color has increased at a rate of about 45 students per year during that same time period. We saw an increase in enrollment of our Black, Hispanic, and multiracial students just in this past year, and a decrease in enrollment of white students and our Asian students. Our American Indian student population has remained relatively the same since last year. So this is another way to look at that trend data from the previous slide. This table includes information from the last 24 years, though. What I'll point out here is that during the 2001 school year, white students made up 79.6% of our student population, and students of color were at 20.4%. 24 years later, white students make up 37.6% of our student population, and 62.4% of our student population are students of color. I just want to clarify now, because it'll get deeper. It says BIPOC on the chart. I will probably say students of color most of the time. That's the column I'm talking about. So those words will be interchangeable tonight.
Right, and on this column, BIPOC is the addition of multiracial, Black, Hispanic, Asian, and American.
Right, right, absolutely. Yep. Okay, this table shows a breakdown of enrollment by race and ethnicity by building. This year we've included pre-K for your reference, and you can see that in our pre-K, 70.8% of our students are students of color or BIPOC. Buildings with the highest population of students of color continue to be Edgerton at 85.7%, Harambe at 80.8%, Faz at 85.2%, and Central Park at 78.6%. Central Park's about the same that it was last year. Our schools with the highest population of, or our school, I'll say, with the highest population of white students continues to be Falcon Heights. A couple of interesting pieces, though, in the data lie with EDW, whose percentage of white students decreased 6% last year, so they're now at 52. They were at 58%. And Parkview, whose last year had their white student population was 51%. They are now sitting at 53% students of color. And so there's been some interesting change at those particular schools. This bar graph gives you a view of our BIPOC students by building over the last 3 academic years. I want to bring to your attention, once again, pre-K, Brimhall, EDW, and Parkview, whose student of color populations have increased the most in those 3 years, as you can see in the bars. Little Canada is the other building that's seen steady increase in our student of color population over time, as you look at this particular chart. Yes?
Question. So if you look at Roz, at around a little over 60%, that kind of matches the whole district. And
Right.
one would make sense because Roz is a
Biggest
collector for the
population.
entire district.
Right.
Rams, maybe not so much because there's also a middle school elsewhere. So you got to look at that in conjunction with the other one. I'll just ask this. I should have asked it before. Maybe is Faz a problem? I mean, does that indicate? I don't know what I'm trying to get at, but it's so much higher.
Yeah.
And one would think that the students who benefit from Faz would also kind of be at the same average as Roz would be.
Right.
I don't know if,
Yeah, I think that's an
could
interesting
be
point.
good, could be bad, could be just a question.
Yeah.
You know.
It's a very interesting
is
point.
there over-identification, is there not, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think those things come to mind. You know, I think FOS is an excellent program, and when we think about what happens at FOS, it's credit recovery, right?
Right.
And so as we look, we're looking at 85% of our students at FAS are students of color. And so, yeah, that is a very interesting point, and I think it probably,
Again, I'd be curious. I don't want to make any
Yes.
assumptions, because it could be a great thing.
yeah,
It's just curious because it leaps
Yeah.
out at me when I look
yeah,
at it.
yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good observation.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. So this chart shows, is another way to look at student population and at our buildings over time. So during this 6-year span, you know, the schools with the steepest, I put in some math language, so let's see if you can get with me on this. But the steepest positive slopes. Let's see how many of y'all like, oh. So the steepest positive slopes, and so if you're, you know, if you remember your math, that means that's the largest growth. So since 2001, that's been Brim Hall, which has shown an 11% growth in students of color. Parkview, which has shown 11% growth, and EDW, which has shown a 10% growth in students of color over that 6-year period. And then this one, this is our last chart on race and ethnicity. This table shows the comparison to surrounding districts when it comes to our population of students of color. We compare the most in size as far as, you know, total enrollment with Burnsville, Centennial, Spring Lake Park, and White Bear Lake. Their populations are relatively close to ours as far as that goes. Out of those 4 districts, only Burnsville has the higher population of students of color than we do here in Roseberry schools. And Burnsville sits at 70.7%. Out of all the schools represented in this chart, only Burnsville, North St. Paul, Osseo, Robbinsdale, and St. Paul have a higher percentage of students of color than Roseville. So now, I'll turn it over to our multilingual program administrator, Lourdes Flores Hansen, to give us our multilingual learners' perspective.
Thank you very much. In the world of multilingualism, we learn to be flexible and creative, and so 2 of the slides decided to take a break. And we're going to use the visual supports, the strategy of using visual supports, and share with you the information. So in your package, you'll see the slide that says Multilingual Learners District Trend. It's a line graph, and it shows the trends in the district for the last 10 years with a little bit of decrease starting in 2014, and then went up, and then starting when we came back in 2021, going up, up, up. So in the last year, we have seen an increase of 2 percentage points in the number of students that are participating in the English Language Development Program. It is worth noting that our MLL program, still in that slide, thank you for staying with me, is the same percentage as it was 10 years ago. So a decade ago, there was 17% of students participating in the program, and that is the case today. However, the numbers of course enrollment we'll have to look at is different. Going now to the next slide is called Multilingual Learner School Trend. And as a school teacher, I would go like this, making sure everybody has that. Don't look at the screen, look at my paper, please. Stay with me. I thought I did not need readers, that's what the optometrist said, but I'm going to try to remember what I saw with the little numbers here. So this chart shows by school building the growth and the different, you see all kinds of up and down lines going all over the place for the last years from 2020 to 2024. Worth noting, Edgerton and Little Canada shows the largest spike. As you can see, they went up. Edgerton being at 38% currently, and Little Canada at 37%. So number-wise, Little Canada has 228 students participating in that program, and Edgerton 152 students participating in the program. RAS, the school currently with the highest enrollment, is at 250 students. So for RAS, the growth has been from 10 to 12% in the last 4 years. Now we can go to the next slide. I'm going to take a deep breath. I can see the next graph that talks about multilingual learners enrollment by building. And this is an interesting chart. It looks at the last 3 years, 2022 through 2024. There are some ups, there are some downs. But we can see that 9 schools show some growth between school year 2023 and 2024. 2 schools, FAS and EDW, show a decrease in the number of students from 2023 to 2024. 1 school, Falcon Heights, shows steady, 0 growth or increase. They're at 8%, the same percentage points that they were at last year. As we saw on the previous slide, again, Little Canada and Edgerton show the highest percentage of students that participate in the ELD program at this point in the whole district. And this is a beautiful funnel that Jay created, which shows all the languages represented in the district. And so we have, according to this report, again, remember the numbers might differ a little bit, but the entire population being 7,498 students, and out of those, 2,684 or 36% of the students in the district are multilingual, speaking 2 or more languages. Isn't that a beauty? And out of the total 7,498, we have 1,198 students, or 16%, 17% of students who participate in the English Language Development Program. 45% of our multilingual students who speak 2 or more languages, are participating in the ELD program.
Luli?
Katie, Director Goggins.
Yes.
I was wondering if we can interpolate anything from here about the families and whether they're speaking it at home or have a broader need. I mean, being multilingual, but English is your first language, or being equal in both, versus needing more help with the families because perhaps they're still using the native language at home.
I would say maybe I have some street data, but nothing really that speaks to the numbers. I would say comparing the 2 bottom numbers about the students that do speak more languages at home and the students who are receiving the English Language Development Program, it aligns with what we're seeing is an increase in the number of students who are learning language and English at the first level. So they're beginning multilingual learners. And so as far as what we're seeing at home is very diverse. It's very diverse. Some families want to continue to learn both languages, and research shows that's what we want to promote. So the students solidify their identity and who they are, and of course, all the wonderful benefits of growing up bilingual, including the delay and the onset of Alzheimer's. So all of us here should be learning more languages. But also some that want to succeed. They want them to succeed in school, and so they're trying to figure that balance. And we're sharing that information with families. You can do both. The brain is amazing.
Thank you.
And the lowest number, is that tend to be more in the younger grades? In other words, right, because if I need more help in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, but as my English becomes more proficient, then I might not need that much help by the time I get to middle school or high school.
Well, it would be worth noting that, so I have numbers per, numbers per building, and yes, it tends to be that we start with lower grades having the largest number. We also see towards middle school a larger number of students falling into what is called level 3, composite level 3, from the access score, the test that they take, which aligns with the fact that there's a place where we tend to plateau because the academic language gets a little harder, and there are other expectations and other burdens, and so that's the push where we are. Yes, so the majority of students who are starting will be in the elementary level. However, it's worth noting again that increasing our percentage points from 15% to 17% has to do with a lot of students who have recently arrived, mostly from Latin America, but other countries or other areas of the world. So we do have a need. We see a need at the middle school and the high school.
Because they enter at those higher levels.
Yes,
That's when they're
yeah.
coming into the district. Thank you.
So just to clarify too, so when we say 2,684 students who are multilingual, is that self-reported by the family then? In terms of, who they are and
Yes.
languages they speak?
Yes,
And then the bottom is who you actually serve. So
exactly.
is some of it also
Do they seek this help themselves, or some of it is recommended by the district, by the teacher? Or is it both?
I think it's mostly us informing families
Yeah.
when we welcome them and we share what kind of programs we have and the services we have. Of course, we're required by law to do the screening and looking at the home language survey that everybody completes. But sometimes we do get some that say, what else can you do? I want my child to learn English. And we look at ways we can do it, whether it's pushing through the classroom or doing the co-teaching model or doing shelter content model. So it's majority, the district, I would say, as a district, we're doing a great job of saying, we're here, welcome, and let me tell you what we can do so you can be successful.
Thank you.
Thank you for those good questions. And then on the next chart, you can see, it's always fun to see the top 10 home languages that are spoken. I think it seems to be the trend, Spanish being the top and Mandarin being the 10th out of 92, right? We speak 92 languages in the district, so it's wonderful. The top chart shows the top 10 languages spoken at home other than English. So that's multilingual learners, 2 or more languages in general. And the bottom chart is the top 10 languages spoken by the students who are in the English Language Development Program, which very, very similar, except as you can see the third language spoken at home, Somali, and on the bottom chart, the third top language among students receiving ELD services, Karen. So it's a little shift. And it's also interesting to know that the trends have similar alignment with what the state of Minnesota shows. So information from the state of Minnesota, the top 5 languages are Spanish, Somali, Karen, Hmong, and Arabic. So Arabic is one of the top languages statewide. Yeah. And then we have, because we love visuals, right? That's a representation of all the beautiful languages, or many of the languages spoken in our district.
And it's top 10 of how many again? Because I know it grows and grows.
92.
92.
Amazing.
Mhm.
Cool, right?
So is this the data that you just previously showed that says home language, that's different data than what we say is multilingual, is that correct?
Students who speak the way we see it with an asset-based mindset, if you speak more than one language, you're multilingual. That's the right definition, right? There's more than one. And so multilingual students are students who speak other languages, not necessarily receiving the services of our English Language Development Program. Does that make sense?
I understand that, but you've used 2 different terms, and that's why I was trying to get my arms around what you meant by the 2 terms. So forgive me for being
No,
a
go
detailed
ahead.
question. But on the chart immediately prior to this page, you say the top 10 languages among MLL students, and then the top 10 languages that are actually receiving services.
Yes, and they're also multilingual students.
So those are the same 2 groupings you had before? Because it used to be, what used to be in this chart in previous years, back a few years, was always home language. And that's why I was just trying to make my transition mentally to make sure I'm on the right page.
Yeah.
So we've now no longer talk about home language, but just broader, whether the student is multilingual, and that's a differentiation on this chart as well.
We still speak about home languages because we want to honor who our students are and the skills and the culture that they bring. Perhaps the difference you're referring might be when we, and there's a lot of that still going on, it's a work in progress. The EL term, is that what you might be referring to? So when you used to say EL or English learners are the students who qualify, who have the criteria based on the screeners or the access scores that they need to receive additional support, that they qualify for that. Now we refer to them as MLL students, multilingual students participating or receiving English Language Development Program services.
And this is still
Did I
home
answer your
language
question?
references, both the top and the bottom chart are home languages.
Okay, so
Of our
the
MLL
home language of our students are who are in the ML, just generally would qualify as a multilingual student?
Anyone who speaks 2 or more languages on the top, and the second one, students
And Kitty,
receiving
you're
service.
accurate, yes. It is the same information that aligns to the previous slide as in this slide.
Okay.
Yep.
Right.
I mean, I love the new categories, I'm just trying to get my,
Yes,
interpret them correctly.
yeah. Did it get clarified for you, Kitty? Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Now I have the privilege to introduce to you Executive Director Thomas.
Thank you. So over the next few slides, we will be sharing information regarding students that are receiving special education services in our district. On this slide, you'll see the trend for special education. For those students that are receiving special education services, we are trending up. This includes all of our students, starting with early childhood special education all the way up to 12th grade. It includes our students that we service through homeschooling, as well as any of our non-public schools as well. Some of the things to take into account are that we have had an increase of students that move into our districts, already receiving services from other districts, as well as be it either that they're moving into the district, and we also have a large population of students that are open enrolled. When they come in, they have an IEP. And an increase in evaluations within our own district. This slide looks at per building, services that are provided per building from the last 3 years. As you can see, most of our buildings are trending up in students that are receiving services, actually all of them, except for ramps. Yes.
I noticed the really large increases are all at elementary school.
Yes.
Are we doing something differently to identify students earlier, or any factors in influencing that?
We are streamlining all of our SAT processes to make sure that we are identifying students that are in need of services. So we're looking at that. We're in the process of that, as well as most of the kids that are moving into our district are at the elementary level. So you're seeing that those numbers are trending up.
And SAT stands for Student
Oh, I'm sorry,
Assistance Team?
Student Assistance Team. I'm such an acronym person. So Student Assistance Teams across each building.
And then if you please remind the board of our Setting 3 programs as well, and what schools are they in?
Yep, so we have our Setting 3 programs at Parkview, has a Setting 3 program for our students with developmental delay, and then our students that receive services due to emotional behavior disorders. And then at Brimhall and EDW are our CID programs for students who receive services for autism, on the autism spectrum disorders. And then, of course, RAMS and ROS have all 3 programs in each of their buildings.
Thank you.
Does this include all our students that are, we educate ourselves as well as our students who are educated by 916 or other?
So when you said the
entities?
district is all the students, does not include the 916 students, not the students in 916, but the district are homeschools and are non-public, and then it breaks it out per building.
So as we bring programs in-house, which I thought we were doing in some of our programs, like for us visually impaired or other students, would that also contribute to
Yes.
the increasing numbers here?
Yes.
And do you know if for the homeschool and the non-public, if their numbers also are increasing, like our other ones, or? If you don't, that's okay, I was just curious.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of, we work a lot with our homeschools, and I don't know if their numbers are increasing. I just think we are probably servicing more, because at times our non-pubs and our homeschool families can choose not to receive our services. And I believe in the last couple of years, we've had more families opting to receive the services.
Which also has an impact on enrollment. Yes, so thank you for pointing that out.
Okay, this slide shows the breakdown of special education enrollment by disability areas. And if you look at, we service, our biggest areas are students that are identified in the autism spectrum disorder and our specific learning disorders. This is hard for me not to just say SLD and our speech language impaired disorders. If you look at that, they're sitting at our top with 23%, 22%, and 21%. This is a different way of looking at those with all of those percentages, but also the number of actual students that are being serviced in each of those areas. And this is our trend from year to year. As you can see, there is an increase every 5 years. This is broke down every 5 years of students. We have seen a decrease in our students receiving services for emotional behavior disorders and other health impaired disorders. But other than that, most of all have gone up. All right, I will turn it back over to Executive Director Vonda Lindy.
Thank you, Executive Director Thomas. We are going to shift into our educational benefits participation, and typically now we describe students whose families may, their income may be below certain thresholds, and they receive free, reduced meals, transportation, athletics, activities, and other areas. So that's what educational benefits means. So this first slide shows the percent of families that qualify for educational benefits, and this is a data trend since 2007. And if, as you can see, we've trended up from 33% in 2007 to 52% in this current school year. We did see a dip between 2018 to 2021, and some of those years coincided with the pandemic. During those years, we're not sure if we had an accurate count, where some of the families, if they had qualified for educational benefits. And then we really started to make a concerted effort with communication in 2022, which corresponds with a greater increase. Based on state law, again, this year, we're able to offer universal breakfast and lunch for all of our students.
Jake, just quick, this is students? You said families?
Their family's income qualifies
Got
the
it. So the
student.
percent is, it's families?
Yes. And so this slide provides a look at our trend data based on each of our schools in the district, as well as our district. And you can see our district line kind of goes through that middle. It's very small, but it's that light blue line across the middle, and you can see the variance based on our schools. If we go to the next slide, you can actually see then this same information, but just put into a 3-year trend in a bar graph, which allows you to see a little bit better of the last 3 years of change. And you can see that we see the largest changes in those 3-year spans at Brimhall, Emmett D. Williams, Fairview Alternative High School, and the largest decrease at pre-K.
And not to be too specific, but if we go back to the first slide, Jake, when you talked about educational benefits, and I was interpreting your question, Director Boguszewski, it is number of students in our district qualifying for educational benefits, from what I understand, not families. So if you have a family with 10 children,
Right.
families
True,
might be
yes.
represented
I
in
see.
a different numerical way, but it
Got it.
is
So the
number of
chart-
students.
Refers to families, but the
Yeah.
numbers themselves.
Yes.
are- Okay, okay.
Because the income
you.
is,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
based on, obviously, students, it's based on the family.
I got it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what I was asking.
Well, this brings us to our last slide for questions and discussion, but before we go to that, I'd like to take a moment to thank some of the staff who worked really hard behind the scenes to make this report possible. It really takes a lot to gather all this data and information for our enrollment and our demographic report. So we'd like to thank Michelle Tessum, Lindsay Most, Colleen Angelar, and Tina Clausen for their time in pulling together this information and data for us.
And thank you for your leadership, Jake. And a statement before any questions that could be shared would be, we certainly view our multilingualism and our diversity as a strength in this district, to be clear. So we're very proud to present this information.
And I also quickly just thank Jake. He puts a lot of work into this. And I've had the privilege of doing this with him for 4 years now. I kind of dread when this comes up, because I'm like, okay, because Jake's gonna have us doing like meeting all the time.
40
to get over this, right. And he's gonna be stickler on making sure it's right and things like that, but I appreciate that. I know this is a big haul for you, Jake, so I just want to publicly thank you, man.
Thank you, Jake.
Thank you.
Just, I had a question. I'm getting back to enrollment. I know Edgerton Elementary near dear to your heart. Do we have any concerns with, it just looks like kind of a decline there. Is there anything happening in Maplewood or some charter school or just something that feels
Yeah,
like it's been?
Great question. We've noticed that both Falcon Heights and Edgerton were the biggest decreases. And I've talked a lot with Principal Wyant around Edgerton with that same kind of curiosity of like, what is it? And initially we had the same kind of wondering, like, are families choosing other options? And I really, it's speculation, so I offer it up with that caveat. But I really think part of this is related to lower birth rates. I heard a state demographer speak maybe a year or two ago, and one of the things that she said is the students that were needed to fill those classrooms were never born. And so I do think part of it is our birth rates are down, and so we're not seeing the enrollment like typically hold steady there. But that's something that if you want more information, I can connect with Principal Wyant, because I know they've done a really deep dive into that around Edgerton.
Thank you.
When I get that scans with stuff, I've read even nationally that, people in their 20s to 30s, the early 30s, are delaying or choosing not to have kids more and more and more, so, yeah, I can see
I
that.
think it's important to know too, because we could, do huge campaigns on marketing and branding, and if the students that we're trying to recruit weren't born, then it's a, futile effort. So I think we have to figure out the why and then target our energies. And I know there's ongoing conversations about enrollment on like a bigger scale at the district level.
Well, and because that's a counter reason to competition, right? And, the one school did open recently over on Larpenter, but other that competition is homeschooling, which we might have lost some kids to because they tried it in the pandemic and have never come back. But yeah, I'm not aware of any other like new schools that are in or close to our district that would be new competitors in the market. So, it makes sense that it's more demographic trend than
Competition.
other schools sucking kids away. So, interesting.
Thank you. Mannix.
Just for my own knowledge, and maybe people watching or listening, can you share how we decide when we put the classrooms together, like the 2, 3, or like to merge the classrooms? And if a student's like in it one year, would they be in it the next year as well if it's that same way, or how is that?
For split classrooms? Yeah, that's a really good question. So a lot of it has to do with cohort size. Again, in a perfect world, if you get, a cohort of 75, we can have 25, 25, 25, right? And it doesn't happen that way. Sometimes you get these like bubbles, and that's why we use averages. One of the things that principals will sometimes do in terms of, so it's usually a principal decision as they're allocated their FTE and their staffing, their number of sections or class sizes. And so when we have those numbers that don't quite work, sometimes we'll create a split. Oftentimes we do loop. That's kind of the educational term of like if they're in it as a second grader, they're in it as a third grader.
Okay.
And part of the rationale for that too is one, research supports looping around like relationship building and already having those connections with students and families. Two, for some of our curriculums, we do cycles. So they may get some of the health curriculum they may get the third grade content when they're third graders and the fourth grade content when they're fourth graders, but then social studies might be flipped, which you can do that with things like social studies, health, science, right? Whereas literacy and math are a little bit trickier. But then also, it's really interesting, if you we did a kind of a deep dive into this a few years back around like, what's the research say about splits? Does it, you would think, like, oh, you're teaching 2 curriculums, like 2 different ages, like you would think there would be a negative impact on student achievement, and what research shows is it doesn't. Teachers tend to teach the same way, whether it's 2 grade levels or 1 grade level, and so there isn't a big, research base that would show a difference, whether it's a split or a single classroom. It is more work for teachers. I'll also say that in the same breath of because I can hear them going whoa, 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 right? So the research says one thing, and practitioners may have another perspective. So we try to avoid them, and we also are able to staff them in ways that still feel good for kids.
Just a commentary. I find it very exciting how we have a microcosm of the whole world in our community, and seeing our levels of Asian students, Black students and Hispanic students, they're basically equivalent. I mean, what a cool experience for our students to be able to experience so many different people and so many different backgrounds and life experiences, and bringing that together to prepare them for being out in the world afterwards.
Absolutely. Definitely.
I agree.
I have wondering, I was looking at the enrollment data. Thank you for this, by the way, just amazing. About kind of the different levels, different ethnic group enrollment at different places, and I was looking at the pre-K. So do we actually have a sense of like what happened to to those children who started pre-K? Do we know if they stay in our district? And what is that? Like, I'm just curious about that, right? And then how many of them actually stay all the way?
Yeah, we do track them, we do know who stays in our district or when they would leave and what elementary schools they choose, or, so we do watch that, yeah.
Yeah, so because, some of the demographics is interesting, right? Some groups start very high in pre-K and then we don't know what happened to the percent versus some that were not choosing the service in the Roseville district and then maybe move in later. So it may be interesting to understand kind of the funnel, right? How people come in, how many stay and where they go and why, right? What's the reason for some of them staying or not staying, so.
We didn't always prioritize Roseberry Schools residents going to Roseberry Schools pre-K, and that is a shift in this last year where we prioritize that as well and give them early registration, similar to other district programs as our program has expanded.
It's a story there, like.
Yeah, it could be worth exploring just that
Yeah.
at some future meeting, just to transition pre-K into our district and, because are there marketing opportunities or
Yeah.
whatever to kind of keep kids in, so, yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Fabulous, fabulous work.
Well done, thank you.
I'm feeling like all my friends are leaving me right now.
They are.
They are.
All right, moving on to 6B, Policy 508, first reading of the bullying prohibition.
All right, thank you, Chair Anderson. Tonight, this is the first reading of our review of Policy 508 on bully prohibition. There were some updates in the last legislative session that need to be reviewed and updated for our policy. Just for context, we have used MSBA's, Minnesota School Board Association Red Line Policy as a guide as we bring recommendations for the board to consider. Before I get into the policy, I think it's important to state that all students in our schools have the right to feel safe and welcome and experience a sense of belonging, feel proud of who they are and who their families are. And so I just want to be clear, and I think this is something we would collective as a community agree with, but there is no place for bullying in our schools. And it is our responsibility to do everything we can proactively to prevent bullying and to be responsive when it does happen. There are two elements of the policy that we'd like to bring to the board's attention in regards to reviewing Policy 508. In the most recent MSBA policy, it states this policy must be shared with students and staff. This is already addressed in our current policy in Section 8.0 on student education and on Section 9.0 on notice. So therefore, our recommendation is that no changes are needed regarding sharing this policy with students and staff. That's already in practice. Second area was a bit more complex. The exemplar policy suggests a change that included adding the language malicious and sadistic content. And as an administrative team, we really wrestled with it because using those adjectives felt like dehumanizing language as we're talking about students who are children. And so our initial recommendation was to keep the language out. And we also wanted to be sure we are in compliance with statute. And so we did a legal consult. And I'm going to share the legal guidance with you. It is as follows. The district does need to include that language. The Minnesota legislature amended Minnesota law to create Minnesota statute section 121A.0312. This statute states a school board or of a district or charter school must adopt a written policy to address malicious and sadistic conduct. To define that, malicious and sadistic conduct means creating a hostile learning environment by acting with the intent to cause harm, by intentionally injuring another without just cause or reason, or engaging in extreme or excessive cruelty. Although it's arguably covered by other policies, the legislative intent was to specifically cover it. So therefore, our recommendation is that we include those language changes in policy 508. So with that summary, we'll open it up for discussion and questions you might have.
Comment and a question. The comment is that it just shows that sometimes the legislature maybe isn't as thoughtful as we'd hope them to be.
Present company
But it's going to
excluded.
change soon. It's going to change soon. Am I right, Mr. Johnson? Thank you. The question is, then, is there anything you're recommending tonight that is not needed to align with the new law? And if so, then is this even debatable?
I would say it's not. Like, that was why I did a legal consult on it, because we felt really strongly about it. And here's, if I try to make a generous assumption, the spirit behind it was about protecting, like, protected classes. And I feel like we have a discrimination policy. We have other policies that address that. And maybe not every school district around the state does, right? And so I think that was the strategic energy around why. And there's two policies that I feel like we engage with a lot. One is 520 around student discipline. The other one is prohibition, 508. And I just don't want to dehumanize the young people that we're talking about, especially when we're talking about, you know, we have birth to age 3, we have 4 and 5-year-olds. Like, these are like babies. And so that's why we really wrestled with some of the language. But I don't feel like we can be in compliance with statute and leave the language out.
So then a follow-up just occurred to me, because you did it to us, and I didn't see it here. And at the same time, being aware of Director Goggins' wise guard against putting too much in a policy. Would it be helpful to maybe after the first use of the term malicious and sadistic have an asterisk, and at the end have an asterisk and say something like the definition of malicious and sadistic as in the Minnesota legislative is this, and just put in
It's
there
in
what
there.
you said?
She has it in there.
Oh, it is?
Fine.
Oh, it's in
Fine.
there. I missed it. I'm sorry.
It's defined by Minnesota statute.
Oh, right there.
638A.
Well, okay.
Good suggestion.
Great idea.
I
Yeah,
missed
great
that
idea.
page. I missed it. Great idea. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry.
I have a couple just little detail-y kind of things.
Appreciate that.
First of all, I find the language a little bit unclear between 2.1 and 2.2, referral about who this applies to. Because in 2.1, you're saying school employees include school board members, agent, volunteers, contractors, persons subject to the supervision and control of the district. But yet in 2.2, there's a slightly different definition of that, that the malicious and sadistic conduct applies to school staff, independent contractor. I mean, it's just slightly different terms. So if you could look at how those could be combined, and then again, in the definition, once again, it's slightly different terms. And the term volunteer only shows up in 2.1, it doesn't show up in any of the others. And so if we could look for some consistency for who this applies to in terms of, in essence, who all, like volunteers, for example. To me, it's not clear because only in one section, is it nowhere else, et cetera.
Good feedback.
And then in 2.1 at the very end, it refers to 3.7 below for the definition of, the third definition that I'm referring to that's different. It's actually 3.8 because
Okay.
you've redone some renumbering. So that's extremely trivial, but I thought you'd want to get that.
Yep, I'd rather have it fixed now and then accurate once we post it publicly.
Right, yeah. So that was just some clarity that I thought we could benefit from.
Kitty, to make sure I have those, one, it's matching the language of who this policy applies to in 2.1 and 2.2, and then fixing
And
the
3.8.
3.8. Got it. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, and in particular, volunteers.
Yep.
Because in reading 2.2 and 3.8, I was assuming this doesn't apply to volunteers, so I was actually going to ask about that, and then I realized it's actually in 2.1. So I mean,
Got it.
it's slightly different groups.
Got it. Good feedback. Thank you. We'll address those before we come back for the second reading.
Thank you.
And kind of in line with Director Goggins' thinking, and I don't know if I'm going to ask this the proper way, but where do we, a parent coming into a building, concert, sporting event, do we count parents as volunteers, community members, where are we counting them? Because obviously, parents can display poor behavior, bullying behavior. I mean, just, is that somewhere else I'm missing? Is that a different policy?
Right, that's a really good
I
question.
want to check.
So I would say that.
Times are different.
Right.
I
I think within our sphere of influence is our employees. I think it would be harder to apply this policy to families. That said, we are having larger conversations around our visitor policy, and I could see that showing up more there
Okay.
around it. Because anyone who comes into a school is not an employee or a student, would be a visitor to the school. So that's where we could address guidelines for school visitors.
I was thinking it's kind of a sticky designation. I get that, because as I was reading 2.1, persons subject to the supervision and control of the district. I get that's maybe where they would be, but,
We can also put in other protections in terms of folks who aren't our employees, in terms of if they need restrictions or not discipline, but criminal follow-up or trespass or communications from the district. There's other avenues that we can use in that regard.
Correct.
I'm glad to hear you're having discussions, though. It's, yeah.
Yeah, because it's a public district, so it's publicly owned, but it's also, we're in charge of it, so that's a good question. Is anybody who's on the premises of any district property subject to our control and therefore could fall into this? So any visitor, because we wouldn't want, not just a contractor, we want a parent coming in and like bullying a teacher about something they were upset with their child.
Well, we don't have control. Can we at least be clear that this is the rules on our property?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes, and according to statute, a school principal has the authority to, if there is misconduct by an adult on school grounds, to tell a parent or community member that they're not allowed on school grounds for a period of 1 year.
And there's a policy, not this one, that is somewhere stated?
I've read all of our policies,
remember
Kitty, and I
what-
wish I could say, yes, it's in policy, blah, blah, blah. But
Could
I'd have to
you-
go back and double check.
Could you check, or can we add a bullet in here?
I think because it's in statute, I don't know if we have it in policy, but I'll pursue it and look into it more. I think where it would be most appropriate is in our visitor policy, because that specifically applies to visitors, but I'll double check it.
Because I was just thinking, I thought, we are mixing this up, that we do have policy around conduct, right? General conduct. So, yeah, I might be mixing up whether it's our district or not.
I'd have to go
So,
back to-
something to look into, right?
I'm more familiar with our policy, for our 500s, which are around like students. I would think that would be in the 700s, so we'll double check it and circle back, and we can bring it up when we do the second reading. And also, I'm going to say this as to all of our, to both the board and our community members watching, I think the vast majority of our families share our goals and our partners in supporting students. And there are outliers, right, where sometimes there is adult behavior on school grounds that is not good for kids, and that's also our responsibility to intervene.
Great.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Melissa. All right, we're moving on to our action items for the evening. Policy 534, school meals policy, its second reading. Director Sherry Thompson, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
So I'm here to share the second reading of the school meals policy. This was presented to you at your last board meeting, at which time there were suggestions to basically move some things that really are more appropriate in regulations or procedures. So we have struck those and are moving those to our regulations. And that's all I have. We have just reflected the changes that were requested, so hopefully you've had time to look at that.
Thank you for focusing on the what. I think you did a really nice job of cleaning it up. One thought would be, do we want to add, I don't know exactly where it is, where it refers to the law authorizing the student lunch program, or the free student lunches, to put in the legislation there, so if the because it's, I should have noted which it was that was.
Okay, so like under 2.1,
Yeah, it says accordance with legislation authorizing the free school lunch program. In
Right.
other policies, when we say that, we typically say,
Going to the actual.
the statute.
2.3.A, whatever it is. So it's a very
Yes,
small content.
we can
Reference.
reference the statute.
Yeah.
Similar, yes, to what we've done in some of our other policies.
I might be crazy. Did we try to tend away sometimes from that? Because then if the legislation changed and it got a slightly different number, we'd have to go in and revise the policy?
Well, that's a good question.
That would apply to many too, right?
We have all
Yeah.
kinds of policies.
Yeah.
I know, but I thought we had a discussion about that
Yeah,
once.
that's a good question. That's just how we've normally
Yeah, yeah.
done it, so that's why it came to mind, but
Yeah.
your challenge is a great one.
Yep. Especially with the.
Because the way it's worded, it just says what it is, then it doesn't matter what the policy, what the legislation number is. But you're right, we do have them all over the place.
Right.
So either way, I don't care, it just occurred to me. But
And if this particular policy changes, we still have to revisit that one, right?
Right, yeah.
Yes.
We're gonna revisit anyway.
And of course, we have to, yes, we have to
You're right, 'cause
follow
if it
the
changes-
legislation.
It gets to the number, then we gotta change
We're
it.
gonna still
the
have.
law.
Yeah, okay.
Right, so,
I'm cool, okay. All right, just
it's a good question,
Yeah,
right?
no, it is.
It's a very good question.
Any others? This is the second reading, so we will be moving on this. Anybody else? All right, I will entertain a motion to approve the school meals policy as presented.
And is that with the amendment?
With the
the-
I move we accept it with the addition of the
The
specific
addition, yep, yep.
That's what I was
legislation
just
number
gonna ask for
added,
clarification.
where Sherry indicated, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Is there a second?
Thank you.
Second.
All right. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Policy 534, is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you. Okay. We are now moving to 7.B. All right, board member resignation. Something has happened last week that has caused us to have this as an action item. And so, the Director Johnson has sent us the official letter of resignation. It has been accepted by Dr. Lake and myself. I need a motion to accept Director Johnson's resignation. It's not effective, however, make sure we're clear with everybody and the public, it will not be effective until December 31st of this year. So we will have Director Johnson, his benefit of his knowledge for the rest of the year in our next meetings.
This may be a picky point. Is it effective December 31st? Or is it effective January 1st because he's still a director through December 31st?
I'm saying,
I'm looking at you, Chair.
Because if it's Christmas Eve and I need to call him about something, with school board business, I expect to still be able to do that. I mean, New Year's Eve.
He's gonna answer
But
your
it's a
call.
serious question, because I don't know.
Okay, Mike,
Right.
if for some reason you need to call me, I will answer.
well, throw a
Mi-
minute
Michelle
left.
Michelle picked up this language. Was it from MSBA, the December 31st?
Either, I don't care. Either way.
Yeah.
Technically, through the last minute of
That's
our
right.
year.
That's right.
Yep.
So then I would.
I think it's
I would
accurate.
recommend changing it to January 1st, actually, 2025. Because that's when it's effective. It's effective at 12 midnight and 1 second on January 1st.
I'm fine.
Okay,
All I know is
Good to
when,
miss you, Mike.
you know, you never know.
okay. Feedback from the board? I've got someone's opinion that it should be January 1st. Just the will of the board here.
I don't know that it makes a little difference. If that makes us more comfortable, then I'm perfectly fine with that.
It makes me happy. So, no, I'm kidding. It's
Yeah.
a technical thing, but I just wondered.
Do,
So,
we need to make some changes though, right?
right.
With that, if we do change the date, haven't we? We have
Well, it's in the board packet,
board
correct?
packet.
It's not, isn't
I don't
listed in the HR report.
Yeah, yeah.
board
But
has.
there's
Yeah.
nothing else that we would need to,
Right, and it says last day of service,
Well-
December 31st.
You could,
Ah,
you could
there you
also
go.
say
There you
last
go.
day of
Last
service
day
would
of
be
service.
11:59 on December 31st.
Making a motion with the last day of service, December 31st.
There you go.
Yes.
There
last
you
day
go.
of service.
There you go.
Perfect.
Then
Last
it
day of
matches,
service.
right? Yeah.
Because then you won't have to change your.
That's
vote,
right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm in the,
too.
okay.
Excellent.
Great.
yay.
Now I can sleep again.
So is that kind of like a friendly change to the motion, an amendment to the
Great.
motion?
Absolutely.
All right. Okay, with that addition, you're moving, right?
Yes, I'm moving that we accept Director Johnson's resignation effective
Last day of
with
service.
the last day of service of December 31st.
Yeah, okay. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay, right. Any further discussion on that? All right.
If we said no, does he have to stay?
Well, I just wanted to say, we don't have to approve this. But, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
And congratulations.
Congratulations.
Do we need to?
All right,
celebrate?
which is a fantastic segue,
Because not everybody.
wonderful segue into 7C.
Well, yeah, so.
Chair Anderson,
Oh, yeah.
because this is such a local thing in terms of who voted for Curtis, could we actually acknowledge exactly what happened?
I was gonna let him maybe
Oh.
make some statements during his
Okay.
board report.
Oh,
My assumption was that
okay.
that would be a more
That-
free-flowing.
That's fine, that's
I didn't
fine.
want to take a lot of time for that,
Okay.
let him say some remarks during his board report. I'm sure he has some, and that would be an appropriate time for us
Got
to.
it.
That's okay.
Great. I just want to make sure because
Yep.
I might be leaving wondering what happened here, so.
Great teaser, so anybody watching, wondering, you better hang on, go get your snacks now. and-
Better hang on, yeah.
That's right.
Well, you want to be here for this next part, for 7C.
Sure.
All
Okay.
right. That moves us into a process that we need to discuss and vote on. Resolution approving a process and a timeline to fill a vacant school board seat. With the action that we just previously took, we will be having a vacant school board seat. So this next discussion, just wanting to, I guess I can read part of the background here. Director Johnson's resignation creates a vacancy on the school board for an at-large seat with the term expiring the first Monday in January 2026. State law does require a vacant seat to be filled by election or appointment. The attached resolution outlines the process the school board will follow to appoint a director to serve the remaining unexpired term. A summary of the timeline for this process is below. We could go through it. Have we had a chance to kind of read through the timeline? Just, this can be part of our discussion. Questions come forward, just, do we need to go through the timeline, line by line? I'm just kind of looking at the board. Will the board, how do we want to?
Is this timeline available on the website?
It is on the.
Part of the
yep,
package, right?
yep, It is.
And if the board adopts this resolution, it will be posted tomorrow morning in terms of the application process.
And we will, it is our intent to read the resolution. I just wanted to
Yeah.
know if we wanted to.
You can read it anyway, so.
Yeah, yeah, we will read the full resolution, but any initial questions now on the timeline, just.
I do have a question on the resolution.
Resolution, okay, yeah. All right, then, maybe let's move to the resolution portion, okay? Clerk Chu.
And I will read this resolution. Resolution approving a process and timeline to fill a vacant school board seat. Whereas a recent resignation will create a vacancy on the school board for an at-large seat with a term expiring the first Monday in January 2026. And whereas state law requires a vacant seat to be filled by election or appointment, and now therefore be it resolved that the school board of the Roseville Area Schools Independent School District Number 623 hereby approves the following process to appoint a director to serve the remaining unexpired term. An online application that contains assurances of all applicable requirements for the school board members and for this seat and the following questions shall be open to applicants from 8 a.m. on November 13, 2024 until 4 p.m. on November 27, the year 2024. A, first and last name. B, phone number. C, email address. D, home address. E, why would you like to serve on the Roseville Area School Board? F, please describe your background and experiences with community involvement. How would this serve you as a board member? G, what experiences have you had serving on either private sector or public sector boards? What was your role and what were your takeaways from that experience? H, describe your understanding of the decision process for public school board. How would you react or respond if the majority of the board took an action that you voted against? Number 2, a selection subcommittee comprised of the school board chair, clerk, and treasurer will review and evaluate applications submitted by qualified candidates and nominate a finalist for consideration by the school board. 3, at the December 10, 2024 regular meeting, the following process shall be used to select the appointee. The selection committee will nominate its finalists and provide rationale for the selection. There shall be an opportunity for board discussion. And finally, following discussion, a motion shall be made and a vote taken to appoint the selected individual to the board. And the last point, number 4, the newly appointed director's term will begin on the first Monday in January 2025 after the oath of office paperwork is completed. The motion for the adoption of the foregoing resolution was duly seconded by Senate member, and upon a vote being taken thereon, the following vote in favor of the motion, if that's the case.
Thank you, Shu. Now let's at least second it. We will have a full discussion on this. We'll second it to get to the discussion stage.
Second.
Second, okay. Moved and seconded. Now it's before us on the floor. Let's have a discussion on the resolution itself. Kitty?
Before I do that, I think it is important to point out publicly, I know this will be on the website, but that there will be a 30-day window after the board has made a resolution filling the vacancy where anybody in the community can petition our decision in terms of who will be filling that vacant position. And that fits in the timeline that the subgroup that's been working on this has identified. My question is this, where do we state that we're looking for somebody who will not be running for running for election in 2026? Is that under the application contains all of the applicable requirements for school board members and for this seat? Or where are we putting that?
We'll show you.
Oh, wonderful,
Yeah.
thank you.
Due to the hard work of Carrie, Michelle, Dr. Lake, and this is part of the discussion we were gonna have, but just showing where this is on the website. This is the applicants, any interested parties are gonna go to this. It's the link right on the front page or on the thing, right? You wanted to show it, Michelle, sorry.
It will be on the school board page. And then above this red box here, there will be another red box that will take you to the application. So it will be posted tomorrow, and if you go back a page, you can see that Carrie did a nice job of having the video created, the role of the board. I think that was 2 years ago, so that will be key. And if you go back to that last page, right here, so there's the video, and then click on the application, and then you go to the page that Michelle will go to next.
And the red box leading to the application page isn't here yet, right? It'll be above that one, it'll appear tomorrow morning, okay? Or it'll appear at some point before 8 o'clock tomorrow morning after we approve this.
I'm looking at Carrie for your confirmation. That's correct, right? Okay.
Let's scroll down a little, Michelle, just so that anybody who's interested will be directed here. Good governance practices, what do school board members do? What don't they do? School board member expectations. And we can go in there as well.
Read this
too,
language,
if
yeah.
we want.
Okay, I might be missing something here.
Right there in the middle
That's the second
paragraph.
paragraph, yeah. I was just getting to
Okay.
it. School board member application required. We seek applicants who are dedicated to supporting the district's mission and goals and who do not intend to run for this seat in the upcoming election, allowing the community to select a long-term representative at that time.
Thank you.
I think that addresses that unless you.
Yes, absolutely, I just,
And then scroll back up a little bit, if you would.
Go
And
ahead.
then in those pluses are also, like in school board members' expectations, for
You can go ahead.
example,
You can go ahead.
is the stuff that we talked about sharing with potential applicants, the time commitment involved and things like that, so that everyone's clear that this isn't, 2 hours a month kind of a deal, so.
Michelle, if you don't mind, I mean, I know it takes a little bit of time, but let's just look at every single one, if you don't mind. I think it's just
Every
good.
plus, yeah.
This is our public discussion on this.
Yeah.
The practices, connecting with the community, what do school board members do? Board governs, board monitors performance of the superintendent, what don't they do? Does not manage day to day, and the expectations we have for school board members.
And this again is MSBA language.
Yeah, a lot of this is.
Great.
And then there we have, as we read or as Clerk Chu read in the resolution, then the actual box where they can answer these questions.
Do those boxes accept any number of characters?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's a good question.
well, thank you for all the work that went into
Yeah.
preparing this, because obviously a lot of thought's been given and some great information to help prepare people to make the decision as to whether they wish to apply.
I do agree with you though, Director Goggins, about including that timeline kind of in here somewhere, right? Kind of like, yeah, you know that you apply by 4 o'clock, November 27, right? Then what happened afterwards?
Yeah, is that timeline that you have here on the cover page somewhere in here?
We would need to add it.
It can be added.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's a good
That would be
point.
very,
Yeah.
very, very important, because then people are not looking to another document, but it's right here, right?
Right.
What is expected, what is gonna happen
Exactly.
beyond the application.
Yeah, you could just
We could put the chart.
copy and
Put-
paste
yeah.
on the
the
page.
chart.
Exactly.
Just copy and paste the
Yeah.
whole chart right in there somewhere.
Yeah.
So we're still in discussion mode, just our folks, as
So
I
the
try to get through this, it's.
The motion is specifically to accept this resolution, knowing that it's supported by all of this work behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And knowing that the timeline chart will be added.
We'll add it, yeah.
And also to share, this application process was created following the board's study session items, so taking in all the input we received at that time to build this.
It's not pertinent to the vote, but as we tend to funnel messages for response to the chair, will that be the same process if anyone calls any one of us or emails us asking questions or why this or why that or clarification? Rather than us just answering them willy-nilly, should we funnel all that stuff to you also, Todd?
I know that Michelle will be initial contact listed for any interested parties. I'd say initially, but yes. Jenny and I are definitely resources. It can be contacts.
So if someone calls me, I might first direct them to you.
I would say it maybe would depend on the question they have.
Yeah, maybe question.
If it's like a
Question
technical,
about-
factual thing,
Yeah.
it could be you. If it's anything with like, why'd you do this? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, question about the actual application or just the nitty gritty of that, but anything else? be Jenny.
Please Feel free to offer up a conversation with myself. I'm happy to visit with anyone who's interested, if they're interested in visiting with me.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you would be a great resource for anyone wondering, what's it really like working with the superintendent, or what is, you know,
Well,
all that kind of.
I'm pretty one-sided.
Yeah.
I really appreciate everybody. I know the resolution's on the floor. I appreciate all the hard work, Michelle, again, Carrie, Dr. Lake. There has been a lot of time spent behind the scenes on this. You know, for a good reason, but a very uncharted territory here. Want to be very transparent, very open to the public about this as we start this process. But I also thought it was important. Sometimes we don't always read the whole resolution. I thought in this case, very important to be public and transparent about it. So,
Well, and you know, we mentioned it, and we brought it up a little bit, but I still think some may wonder why an appointment versus a special election now. The law allows us to do this because it's actually much less disruptive.
Yep.
And we want to fill it quickly enough to not be disruptive to the things we need to do for the next 11 months, 12 months. And we really, 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 really are committed to letting the community speak through their votes next November in an election for a permanent person, not just an interim person. So that's why we want folks who intend to not run at that point in time, because we don't want to give them any unfair advantage over new candidates who would enter in the fall of 2025. So we're trying to do the stuff that we can do to get a full board to get what needs doing. But totally respecting that we want the will of the people to govern who that real replacement is for the 4-year term that follows on without any unfair benefit coming from the interim appointment. So I think it's
Thank you.
maybe helpful to spell that out to folks who might be interested.
yep. All right. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion on the resolution before us? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
I'm sorry, did we have a motion in a second?
It was seconded.
Yeah, moved.
I read the
She
Oh, okay.
read it,
Yeah, we
I
did,
read
sorry.
it.
If
I
she moved it and you.
and then I seconded it.
Yep,
And then we had,
As a resolution, do we have to do roll call vote?
Yes,
yep, good point.
because it says right in there.
Yeah, thank you.
Right.
Thank you. So Clerk Chu, roll call.
Thanks for the reminder, because I think we all would have
Thanks
just.
for the reminder.
we're just gonna blurt it out.
Director Goggins.
All right, so signaling yay or nay, whether you support this resolution. Director Boguszewski.
Yay. Aye, yes. Plus, thumbs up, all the above. Green light.
Treasurer Clark.
Yay.
Chair Anderson.
Aye.
Director Goggins.
Aye.
Director Johnson.
Aye.
And Clerk Chu says yay.
Thank you, Clerk Cho. The resolution has passed.
Unanimous.
Thank you again to everybody. This starts a very interesting process now, moving forward. And again, thank you to everybody who's worked so hard and diligently on this. And I'm looking forward to seeing the website tomorrow. Fantastic.
Yeah, great.
All right, that moves us on to board reports for the evening. I think I will start with Clerk Chu.
Sure, yeah, I would say, so I think 3 of us attended our board financial meeting, our committee meeting, and we usually do that in advance of our district financial advisory committee. Just very thankful for our community members who are interested to serve on that committee. So some of the topics we discussed that help us kind of set the agenda for the next, for the district advisory meeting were enrollment trends, were an update that were good news about our audit process this time. That after several years of struggle, the news is that we are on time to submit our audit report this time to MDE by the end of the year. We hope that is still the case,
thank you for all the work of Director Thompson and your team. It's just wonderful news to hear that. And we had a lot of discussion about our enrollment, a lot of discussion about the trend, what is happening, kind of what Melissa was talking about, right? Really digging into that because enrollment impact our financial health. And I'm looking at the agenda. I think there was another topic about, if you want to continue. Yeah.
Just that we talked about the process for enrollment projections, and
Yep.
getting an enrollment model,
Yep.
and also the whole multi-year projection model. How do we, going out 3 to 5 years, what kind of assumptions will we need to make,
Yep.
and have had some conversation around that. And then possibly coming out of that is the need, if there is a need in defining that, then do we need to go for a tech levy? We want to be very intentional and very clear if the committee feels we need to move in that direction for the district.
So we're in the kind of discovery phase, right? Kind of getting a lot of data, understanding where we are in order to decide on that, and when that is going to be, and so on. So it was 2 very good meetings. I thought, just very grateful to our committee. Then the other thing that I've attended, I think the 3 of us were there too, at the kindergarten open house. Oh my goodness. Oh my God. That was so fun. That was so fun to see how it was showcased. So many families with children for the class of 2038. If they enroll in kindergarten, the kids enroll in kindergarten this coming year, they will be the class of 2038.
And we have shirts.
And they have shirts
Yes.
for them. I know, it was great. So I really thank you for all the staff and all the schools and this, kind of like putting that together. It was absolutely amazing. The energy in that space was just so like hopeful and very much kind of like, this is our future, right? This is our future. So just happy to be part of that, and thank you for the invitation from Community Ed to host that. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Melissa, for your leadership in that event, and Carrie and
thank
Michelle
you.
and Cindy, and our entire team was there. I
Yeah.
think I was the one who could not be there, so a huge shout out, thank you.
Yes, it was great. It was wonderful.
Well, and so many different groups were there. I mean, they had information on buses, and they could
Yeah,
go out in the
that's
buses.
right,
They had
that's right.
information on the various special education, I mean, everything. At
Everything.
Every single
Nutrition,
school,
right? Nutrition. Even, everybody get like, this is what your lunch look like, and it was very healthy.
I haven't been to a kindergarten roundup for 10 years, and then they were at an individual school, and there was nowhere near the resources to answer all the questions, and the excitement with the teddy bear
Bear
band,
band.
Yeah.
graduation pictures with little miniature
I know,
gowns
that
in
was
front of the, for their
It was a
19.
home run.
Oh, it was amazing.
It was
a really
amazing.
exciting event.
It was
So much fun.
amazing. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you all. And thank you for all the families who are choosing Roseville and considering Roseville. Really, thank you. Yeah. So that's all I got.
Thank you. Director Boguszewski.
I actually don't have anything. I'll just yield what my time would have been to someone else who may be more long-winded than me.
Nothing about Harambe or?
Oh, Harambe, you mean the only
We got
year-round.
this close.
Retract that, sorry. I retract. Okay.
Thanks, Mike. Director Clark, Treasurer Clark.
I don't have much. I would echo about the kindergarten roundup. It was really a great event. Families were very excited. It was great to have everybody there. And like I said, all the staff was there, so that was great
yeah,
to
it was
see.
great.
Everybody was in good spirits of, and helping out. The only thing I will say, in our 916 board meeting last week, they did the world's best workforce, and this is only the second year they've done it. The intermediates did not have to do it previously to that, so they shared that, how it related to the benchmarks and the kindergarten readiness and all that still there. So, but otherwise, I don't have much else. That was it. I did attend the sectional
Yes.
volleyball final game, so there. We did win sectionals. Won one game in state as well, so the
We did.
volleyball team did well.
Great.
And cross country did well as well. So.
State champion
State.
again.
Great.
Director Goggins.
let's see, I got to the Lights On After School at Brim Hall, went to the morning section, and it was so much fun to see how much the kids were actually leading the events. I mean, like, there was one of the students who was reading the story for the morning, and it was just a great event, and it was real wonderful to celebrate the great school program that we have before and after school. AMSD last week had a number of different topics that were covered. I won't go into all of them, but the one I was going to mention was Profile of a Graduate. They 3 different districts shared their profiles, and it was very interesting to see how they use that as a lens for doing their business. And I know there's been some conversation around that, so it was fascinating to see how some other districts are using that. I made it to a debate tournament, my first one in 50 years. I used to be a debater myself. We actually went to nationals 50 years ago. But it's a very different structure, and it was really fun to see. There were 3 of the 4 kinds of debate they do, and they had 3 of them at this tournament. And the engagement of the kids and the research they did, and the logical thinking and the critical, analysis, it was just really incredible to see. And it's really wonderful that we could host a debate tournament, and we actively have students participating and learning all the wonderful skills that extracurricular activity offers. I attended the Equity Leadership Advisory Council last week, and I always enjoy going to that meeting, but I have to say this was the best one I've been to. Well, a lot of it was because Delon was able to share the student survey, some of the early results of the student survey, and so there was conversations around, what did we notice, what are we wondering about, what recommendations we get off that data. And it was just really rich discussion. And then we had planned to get into chapter 5, which is kind of the street data, which is kind of the action piece. But we were doing so deep in the first one that we delayed that. But they actually go together. They're really complementary. And so it was just fun to see how that committee is getting to what we had envisioned their role would be, of really looking at the district and helping us in our journey as we're moving forward, and equity, providing the broader input from the community and all the different stakeholders. So that was really exciting. And then the last thing I wanted to share is I did get to the middle school PTA, and that, let's see here, I get my notes from that one here, I've got too many things here. And their PTA is predominantly focused on what do they want to be able to fund and how do they raise those funds. But after they finish their business, then they spend a significant amount of time where parents could share their experiences in school. And just a few of them I thought I'd share with the board, because I thought that it was lovely to be able to hear that. One was around Schoology and the challenges that parents have with Schoology, because it's not as timely updated. And then from the system side, evidently when you enter a date, it already shows that it's past due, even if it's due in the future, just because you have that requirement in the system. I mean, so it sounds very complicated, but they're going to try to get somebody at a future meeting to come and talk about the Schoology, a teacher who has a lot of knowledge in their building. But that was an area that was concern for parents. The other one that really was interesting was, as we're trying to do the equity grading, and we're trying to reduce the points that go with formative and more of summative. Did you really learn the material in the end? One of the ripple effects that they were seeing is that their students were choosing not to do the homework because it wasn't counting for as much points. And how to work through that, and we had a great conversation around equity grading more broadly, and what that's trying to achieve, but the challenges in managing that transition as students realize the value of that in doing well on the summative work. But that was this. And then the third thing that was interesting from parents was that as so much of the homework is digital now, they can't see it. And so the newsletters from the classrooms are really helpful, and possibly can even do more around including questions you can ask your students so you can connect with what they're doing and provide that home-school relationship, since as a parent you can't see the physical products like in the past. So those were just two things I thought it was worthy of the board's attention. That's it.
All right,
Cool.
Director Johnson, you have the floor.
Thank you. We typically don't do a lot of political discussion here, but I'll just break the rules just a little this one time. Last Tuesday, I was given this distinct honor of being elected as the next state representative for District 40B. That's for those of you who don't know, that's most of Roseville and southern third of Shoreview. I've been saying that like 12 times a day for the last 6 months. But what I will say is that it's been a joy to run, and for those who voted for me, I thank you very much. For those who didn't, I thank you for being part of the process and making your voice known and heard. And all I can say is that my job, it's just going to change a little, is to represent everybody in the district, whether you voted for me or not. And so, if you have stuff you want to talk to me about, then you know how to find me. You guys are absolutely an amazing group of individuals, and it is the idea of leaving you makes this very bittersweet. That being said, you're not getting rid of me all that easily. I'm here till the end of the year, and I plan to visit often. So I'll just leave that there so that we can get out of here at a reasonable hour. Because I don't want to go year round like Harambe, which is the only school that has year round. All right. Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Thank you.
You will definitely be contacted next January, February. We'll have opportunities to say further things in December. You will still be here in December. So, congratulations again. I do have a number of things, folks. Just bear with me. Some very important things to mention. I had the privilege of attending the Minnesota Gun Violence Prevention Seminar with Associate Superintendent Melissa Sonic at Hamline University last week. And we're all in for a treat next week with Dr. James Densley. Having the opportunity now to meet the man. Also met Dr. Jillian Peterson, authors of The Violence Project, a book that I highly recommend. But I don't know how we swung it, but we were front row. We were right there. But listening to Dr. James Densley, the panels that were there, but Dr. James Densley is the right person to moderate this, to speak, to provide this welcoming atmosphere next week as we tackle this issue of gun violence. But we're in for a treat. It's going to be a wonderful community event next week. I found it personally very deeply impactful and inspiring. I told this to Melissa, if I wasn't on the school board, this is something that I would have wanted to have attended, because the issue is pretty important to me. Fantastic collection of stakeholders. It was a packed room, everyone there. I'm trying to grapple this question of, what is the pathway to gun violence? What does it look like? And how we each have a role in this. One of the big questions at the end of the day, the role we have to interrupt this pathway. But it was pretty powerful. I can't wait for our community event next week. I had a chance to attend the Brimhall Silent Auction, my spouse and I, Holly. We attended the Brimhall Silent Auction at the Rosetown Legion, very well attended. It was just a blast. And I got like a little announcement from the Brimhall PTA that, and I thought this was a staggering amount, over $19,000 was raised at the silent auction. And that's all to fund resources and programs for students and staff at Brimhall. Just a fabulous event. Congratulations to Brimhall PTA and the silent auction. Just phenomenal amount. This Thursday is National Community Ed Day, this Thursday, November 14th. So I want to say thank you to Cindy Arneson and her staff for all her hard work, all the efforts in community ed. So National Community Ed Day. Thank you, Cindy, and your staff. And then it's also very important to recognize that yesterday was Veterans Day. Roseville Area Schools honors all of our staff, our family members, and our community members who have served our country and continue to do so. You have our deepest gratitude and thanks. Wanted to make sure we mentioned that. That's all I have. Superintendent's report.
Thank you. I'll open with, now more than ever is the time for Roseville area schools, everyone in our schools to stand with our students and our families. And it's a time for us to continue to be dedicated and focused on serving all and fostering a sense of belonging and inclusion in our schools. And I'd like to read part of the message we sent out to all district families to our community this evening. We've become aware of troubling incidents in our communities and across the nation. These incidents involve deeply offensive and racist messages directed at people of color, as well as language aimed at women and girls, suggesting a threat to their rights and body autonomy. Such behavior, especially targeting specific communities with hateful language and personal implications, is not only alarming, but is completely unacceptable. In Roseville area schools, we strongly denounce these disturbing trends in any language and action that aims to intimidate, marginalize, or spread fear. These words and actions are harmful, divisive, and have no place in our community. We are committed to maintaining our schools as safe spaces where all students feel valued, respected, and protected. And I'd encourage the community, please reach out to me or any trusted adult in our school community with any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lake. All right, if there's no further business before the board, we do have a study session. I'm going to recommend a 5-minute quick break, but there's no further business before the board. We stand adjourned.